I'd driven the same stretch of highway 100 times, but that night it looked different. Emptier, like the darkness had swallowed the edges of the world. It was close to midnight, mid-October, the kind of cold that crawls through your jacket seams and settles in your bones. I just finished a double shift at the diner and was heading home along Route 48, a 2-lane road that winds through 30 miles of forest before hitting the next town. No houses, no lights, just black trees pressing against the narrow strip of asphalt. About 20 minutes in, my headlights swept over something pale on the shoulder. At first I thought it was a deer, then the shape moved, slowly, like it was dragging itself. I tapped the brakes. It was a man. He wore a thin white shirt despite the cold. His head hung forward, dark hair plastered to his forehead. When the beams hit him, he turned toward me. His face was a blur of bruises and dried blood. I should have kept going, but instinct, or maybe guilt, made me pull over. I left the engine running, hazard lights clicking in the silence, and stepped out. "You okay?" My breath puffed white in the air. He didn't answer. Instead, he lifted one arm and pointed down the road, toward a patch of darkness between the pines. "There," he whispered. His voice was raw, like it had scraped against something sharp. I followed his finger. Nothing but black trees. "What's there?" I asked. His eyes met mine. For a second, I thought they were gray, but when the hazard lights flashed, they caught the red glow and looked almost silver. "Help her," he said. A cold gust rattled the leaves. When I looked back at him, he was already walking into the woods. "Wait," I called. I grabbed a flashlight from my glove compartment and followed, crunching over dead leaves. The beam barely cut through the darkness. Branches snagged at my jacket. I shouted again, but the woods swallowed my voice. After maybe 50 yards, I found a narrow path, half hidden by brush. And there, faint but unmistakable, a child's cry. Every hair on my neck stood up. "Hello?" I said, louder this time. "I'm here to help." The crying stopped. A metallic sound followed, a soft clink, like a chain shifting. I swept the light ahead. The path opened into a small clearing where the moon pooled like cold milk. In the center stood an old wooden picnic table, warped and slick with moss. On top lay a single shoe, a tiny pink sneaker, no bigger than my hand. The forest was silent except for my own breathing. Then, from behind me, a voice said, "You shouldn't be here." I spun around. It was the man from the road. Only now his face was clean, no blood, no bruises. He looked whole, healthy, but his eyes still had that strange silver sheen. "Where's the girl?" I demanded. He stepped closer. "Leave before they come back." "Who?" The branches above us groaned, though there was no wind. From deeper in the woods came a low rhythmic sound, like chanting carried on a distant breeze. My flashlight flickered. The batteries were new, but the beam dimmed to a weak glow. "Run," the man said. Before I could speak, he was gone, vanished into the dark as if he'd stepped behind an invisible wall. I turned in a slow circle, light trembling in my hand. The chanting grew louder. Low voices, many of them, moving closer. I bolted. Branches whipped my face as I fought through the brush back toward the highway. The voices followed, matching my pace, a sick harmony that rose and fell like breathing. When I burst from the trees, my car was still there, hazard lights pulsing red on the asphalt. I dove inside, locked the doors, and floored it. Only when the woods were a smear in the rear view did I slow down. My heart hammered so hard I felt it in my teeth. I told myself it was exhaustion, that the man was some drifter, that the chanting was the wind. But as I passed mile marker 17, the car's dashboard lights flickered and the engine stuttered, just for a heartbeat. And in that flash of darkness, I smelled something. Charred wood, and something sweeter, almost like burning hair. I didn't stop until I saw the glow of the next town's streetlights. Only then did I pull into a 24-hour gas station and sit trembling behind the wheel, replaying everything. The man, the girl's cry, the chanting. I needed proof that I hadn't hallucinated. I grabbed my phone, 3:17 a.m. There was a streak of mud across the screen and something else smeared faintly along the edge. I wiped it with my sleeve and my stomach turned. It wasn't mud. It was dried blood. I hadn't touched anything in the clearing. I hurried inside the gas station. The cashier, a heavy-set guy with a trucker cap, looked up from a crossword. "Long night?" he asked. "You could say that." I tried to steady my voice. "You ever hear anything about mile marker 17 on Route 48? He froze mid-pen. His eyes flicked to the window as if he expected someone to be standing there. "Why?" he said carefully. I told him, quick, messy details, like shaking water from a dog's coat. The man, the woods, the voices. He set the pen down. "You didn't go in there, did you?" When I nodded, he exhaled sharply and reached beneath the counter. I half expected a gun. Instead, he brought up an old, dog-eared map. "People around here don't talk about it," he said. "That stretch of forest, been bad since before I was born. Back in the 70s, a family disappeared there, whole thing. Car left running by the shoulder, doors open, baby seat empty. Cops searched for weeks, found nothing but a burned-out picnic table and a child's shoe. I felt the air leave my lungs. Pink sneaker?" His face tightened. "That's the story." He leaned closer. "Listen, friend, folks say the woods keep what they want. If you heard chanting, you're lucky you walked out." A bell jingled as someone entered behind me, and the cashier snapped the map shut. His message was clear. Conversation over. I drove home with the sun creeping over the horizon, a thin line of gray that did nothing to thaw the chill in my bones. I kept expecting silver eyes to appear in the rearview mirror. My apartment felt wrong when I stepped inside, like someone had been there and rearranged the air. I checked every room. Nothing. But on the kitchen table sat a shoe. Tiny, pink, spotted with moss. I backed into the hallway so fast I knocked a picture frame off the wall. My phone buzzed. An unknown number. A text. Helper. No name, no punctuation. I called the police. 2 officers arrived, skeptical but polite. They bagged the shoe, asked routine questions, then exchanged a glance I couldn't read. "We'll file a report," one said. Probably a prank. But his partner's eyes lingered on the shoe with something close to fear. After they left, I barricaded the door with a chair and sat awake until dusk. At 8:13 p.m., my phone vibrated again. Same number. Mile 17. Tonight. Or she's gone forever. I should have ignored it. But the words pulsed in my head like a heartbeat. By 10, I was back on Route 48. The night was colder, darker. My headlights seemed weaker, swallowed by the trees. When I reached mile marker 17, the engine sputtered and died, just as before. I stepped out, flashlight in hand. No wind, no animal sounds, only the thick, syrupy quiet of a place that doesn't want you. The narrow path waited like an open mouth. I forced myself forward, each crunch of leaves absurdly loud. The chanting started again, soft and distant, rising with every step. The clearing looked unchanged, the warped picnic table, moonlight pooling like liquid metal. But now a figure stood beside the table. The man from the road. He smiled faintly. "You came back." "Where's the girl?" I demanded. He tilted his head. "Listen." The chanting swelled until it throbbed in my teeth. Shapes emerged from the tree line, dozens of them, hooded and faceless, circling the clearing in perfect rhythm. My flashlight flickered, then died. "Who are they?" I shouted. "The ones who keep the bargain," he said. "She can leave if another takes her place." "What bargain?" He stepped closer. "She's been here 43 years, waiting. Someone must stay so she can go." The circle of hooded figures tightened. I saw a small shape among them, a child, maybe 6 or 7, her hair a tangle of moonlit curls. The pink sneaker was missing from her left foot. She looked up at me, eyes wide with a plea I felt rather than heard. I backed away. "This isn't real," I said. This is some sick..." The chanting cut off. The woods fell silent. The girl stepped forward. "Please," she whispered. "Help me." My breath clouded the cold air. The man watched, expressionless. I thought of the shoe on my kitchen table, of the blood on my phone, of the cashier's warning. The woods keep what they want. I took another step back. "I can't," I said. The hooded figures began to hum, low, vibrating, like the earth itself was growling. The girl's eyes shimmered with silver light. The man's voice was almost gentle. "Then you will never leave." The trees groaned. The ground tilted. I turned and ran. Branches slashed my face. The chanting rose behind me, faster, harsher. I burst onto the road and sprinted to my car. The engine roared to life on the first turn of the key. I didn't question it. I floored the gas. Only when the mile markers blurred past and the forest receded did I glance in the mirror. The man stood at the tree line, perfectly still, silver eyes glowing faintly. Beside him, the girl held the pink sneaker. She smiled. I moved 2 states away within a week. Friends said it was impulsive. I told them I needed a change. But every night at 3:17 a.m., my phone buzzes. No number, just a single word. Soon. Last night, for the first time, I heard a faint chant beneath the buzz. It sounded like my name. I never meant to spend the night on Ash Lane. It started as a sublet, 3 months while I finished my graduate thesis. The ad was taped to the university coffee shop door. Room available, furnished, cheap, quiet. The kind of thing you tear off without thinking. The address was a house I'd passed a dozen times but never noticed. A sagging Victorian with a black wrought iron fence. During the day it looked ordinary enough, but at dusk it seemed to lean toward the street, as if trying to listen. Mrs. Harrow, the landlady, answered the door before I could knock. Thin as a matchstick, white hair scraped into a knot, eyes the color of dishwater. "You're the student?" she said, not a question so much as a verdict. "Rooms upstairs. Cash preferred." I followed her through a hallway that smelled of mothballs and damp wood. The wallpaper, roses faded to brown ghosts, peeled in long curls. A grandfather clock ticked offbeat, like a heart with an arrhythmia. The room itself was fine. Small bed, small desk, a single window facing the alley. Rent was absurdly low. I paid the first month on the spot. That first night I dreamed of water running behind the walls, steady and cold like a hidden creek. When I woke, the radiator hissed even though it wasn't on. By the third day I noticed the other tenants, or rather, I noticed the absence of them. The ad had promised shared kitchen, but every time I went down the narrow back stair, the space was spotless, lights off, as though no one ever cooked. Yet I'd hear faint footsteps overhead, slow and deliberate, when I knew Mrs. Harrow was out. One afternoon I climbed to the 3rd floor, curious. The hallway smelled of iron and mildew. 4 doors stood closed, each painted the same sickly green. I knocked on one. No answer. Another. Nothing. As I turned to leave, a door at the end creaked open half an inch. A whisper slid through the gap. "Don't stay past winter." The door shut before I could speak. Classes and thesis work kept me occupied, but the house intruded at odd hours. Lights flickered in patterns, 3 short, 1 long. My phone alarm reset itself to 3:11 a.m., no matter what time I set it. One night I heard someone crying 2 floors up, a low, ragged sound that went on for hours, always stopping the instant I stepped into the hallway. When I mentioned it to Mrs. Harrow at rent time, she gave a dry smile. "Old pipes. They moan when it's cold. But it's 60 degrees. Her eyes sharpened. Pipes moan when they choose to. The first undeniable incident came in late October. I was typing at the desk when a chill rolled across the room, sudden as an opened freezer. My breath fogged. The radiator remained cold. Then, a knock, not at the door, at the window. I turned slowly. Outside, the alley lay dark and empty. The knock came again, sharper, directly against the glass. I yanked the curtain. Nothing. But in the condensation, a single word was written backward, as if from outside. Leave. I ran to the hallway. Mrs. Harrow stood at the bottom of the stairs, as though she'd been waiting. Drafts, she said before I spoke. This house exhales. Halloween night, the neighborhood kids rang the bell, but no one answered. I peeked from my window and saw them glance uneasily at the house before scurrying away. Something about the place repelled them, like a magnetic field. Near midnight I heard music, a scratchy gramophone tune drifting from the third floor, a waltz. I climbed the staircase, each step groaning under my weight. The hallway was dim, wallpaper damp to the touch. At the far end, the same door that had opened a crack before now stood wide. A faint amber glow pulsed inside. I crossed the threshold. The room was empty except for a round table draped in yellowed lace. On it sat a single object, an old Polaroid camera. It flashed the moment I looked at it. The photo slid out with a soft mechanical sigh. Hands shaking, I picked it up. The image showed the room exactly as I stood in it. Same table, same camera. But behind me in the photograph, a figure loomed. Tall, faceless, its outline smeared as if it were moving when the shutter snapped. I spun around. No one. When I turned back, the Polaroid was blank. The figure had vanished from the image. I barely slept. Morning light brought no comfort. The photograph remained on the table, now nothing but gray haze. At the library that day, I dug through public records for 212 Ash Lane. Buried in microfilm was a clipping from 1984. 4 students missing from boarding house. Police baffled. Names, ages, a grainy picture of the very room I rented. Mrs. Harrow's name appeared once, listed as landlady and only witness. She'd been the same age then as now, if the blurred photo was to be believed. I closed the file, pulse hammering. When I returned that evening, the Polaroid on my desk had changed. The gray haze had sharpened into a new image. My own bed, neatly made, except now a dark silhouette stood beside it, head tilted toward the pillow. That night the house woke in earnest. Floorboards throbbed under unseen footsteps. Water gurgled behind walls like someone whispering through a straw. The grandfather clock below struck 13. I locked the door and pressed my ear to the floor. Faintly from the third floor came the same slow waltz, a soft scrape at my door. I whispered, "Who's there?" A child's voice, thin as a thread. "Don't let her in." The knob turned once, twice, stopped. I stayed rigid until dawn. By morning, I'd decided to leave. I stuffed my backpack, grabbed my thesis notes, and swung the door open. Mrs. Harrow waited in the hallway. "You can't leave," she said. Something in her eyes had changed. They were no longer dishwater gray. They were black, flat, depthless. "The winter isn't over." She smiled, and every instinct screamed to run. I bolted down the staircase, 2 steps at a time. The air thickened as I descended, humid, metallic, like breathing through damp cloth. Behind me, Mrs. Harrow's footsteps followed at a measured pace, unhurried, confident. The front door loomed. I yanked the deadbolt. It didn't budge. The key I'd always kept in my pocket was gone. "Please," I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. "I just need to leave." Her reply was almost kind. "The house decides. Winter isn't done." I darted for the kitchen. The back door rattled under my grip as if nailed shut from outside. Every window I tried was the same, frames swollen tight, glass immovable. Above, the floorboards groaned. Slow, deliberate steps multiplied, as if a dozen unseen tenants now walked the halls. The house was awake. I retreated to the parlor, the one room with a view of the street. Through the lace curtains I saw my car across the iron fence. But the neighborhood looked wrong. Streets swallowed by fog, the lampposts flickering like candle stubs. Behind me, the grandfather clock struck once, twice, 13 times. I turned. Back at my apartment, I unpacked my backpack and froze. At the bottom lay the final photograph, the one that should have been blank. Now it showed the house exactly as I'd seen it that first night, door slightly ajar. In the window, a faint silhouette stood. Its head was cocked, eyes two black voids. A smear of fresh frost traced the edges of the picture, cold against my fingers. As I set it down, my phone chimed, a calendar reminder I hadn't created. Winter ends soon, return. The time set for the alert, 3:11 a.m. I was halfway through a cross-country drive, the kind where the highway feels endless and the radio only makes the loneliness louder. It was close to midnight when the gas light came on and the next exit sign promised fuel in 20 miles. I figured I could make it. 15 minutes later, a low fog swallowed the road. The temperature gauge dropped a few degrees. Then, like a mirage, a rest area appeared, a flickering neon sign reading Maple Cross Welcome Center. I didn't remember seeing it on the map. The lot was empty except for a single 18-wheeler idling at the far end, exhaust curling like breath in the cold. I parked near the restroom building, the fluorescent lights inside buzzing like a swarm of insects. The moment I stepped out, the sound of the truck's engine died. The silence was so sudden it rang in my ears. Inside, the tiled floor gleamed wet, as though freshly mopped, though no one was there. A vending machine hummed faintly. The air smelled of bleach and something metallic, like coins or blood. I washed my hands just to break the quiet. When I looked up, the mirror behind the sink reflected not only me, but the entire room. Except in the reflection, the door stood wide open and a man was walking in. I spun around. The door was closed. No one. My heart thudded. I shook it off, blaming road fatigue. Back at the car, I noticed the truck's cab light was on, though I hadn't seen anyone climb in or out. Its trailer door hung slightly ajar, swaying with a faint creak. Something about it drew my eyes. A muffled sound drifted from inside, maybe a cough, maybe a sob. I told myself it wasn't my business. Still, I found my feet carrying me closer. The metal latch was cold enough to burn. I pulled it just enough to peek inside. Darkness, and a smell like damp earth mixed with something sweet and rotten. Then a whisper from the shadows, "Close it." I jerked back and let the door slam. The whisper came again, clearer, from behind me this time. "Close it, or they'll see." I spun around. No one. I hurried to my car. The engine refused to start, not even a click. The fog thickened until the parking lot lights glowed like dull moons. Shapes moved at the edges, slow, deliberate, too tall to be human. From the restroom building came a low mechanical groan, like pipes straining under pressure. Then the door creaked open on its own. A figure stepped out, tall, thin. Its outline shimmered as if heat rose off it, though the air was icy. It moved toward me without a sound. I locked the doors, heart hammering. The figure stopped a few feet away, head cocked at an unnatural angle. Where a face should have been, there was only smooth gray skin, like unfired clay. It raised one hand and pressed it flat against the driver's side window. The glass frosted instantly beneath its palm. My breath came in short, panicked bursts. Then, as suddenly as it appeared, the figure lowered its hand and pointed toward the truck. The trailer door swung open again, wide this time, revealing a faint reddish glow deep inside. The whisper returned, right next to my ear, though the windows were shut. "Don't let them leave." The truck's engine roared to life on its own. Headlights flared, stabbing through the fog. The figure outside my window dissolved into a swirl of mist and vanished. I fumbled for my phone. No signal. The battery icon drained from 60% to black in an instant. The truck began to roll forward, slow but unstoppable, trailer door still yawning wide. Inside that red glow, something shifted, massive and coiled, scraping metal as it moved. My car finally coughed and the engine caught. Relief surged, until I realized the gear shift wouldn't budge. I was locked in park. The truck turned toward the exit, its lights now the color of blood. From the darkness of the trailer, A second set of headlights flickered. No, not lights. Eyes. Dozens of them. The whisper came again, urgent, overlapping, a chorus of voices. "Close it! Close it! Close it!" I yanked the door handle, desperate to move, when a sudden impact rocked the car. Something heavy had landed on the roof, metal groaning under weight. A slow scrape moved from front to back, like claws raking steel. I craned upward and caught a glimpse through the windshield. A silhouette crouched on the roof, long limbs folded like a spider's. The truck horn blared, deafening, and the trailer began to shut on its own. But before it sealed, I saw them. Figures packed inside like cargo, eyes glowing faint gold, faces stretched in silent screams. The creature on my roof hissed, a sound so high it made my teeth ache. Then, blackout. Every light in the rest stop died at once. When they came back a heartbeat later, the truck was gone. So was the weight on my roof. The fog thinned, revealing an ordinary empty parking lot. My gear shift slid smoothly into drive. I sped onto the highway, adrenaline spiking, checking the mirrors every few seconds. The neon sign behind me flickered once, twice, then blinked out completely. Only when I reached the next well-lit exit did I dare to breathe. I pulled into a 24-hour diner and stumbled inside. The waitress took one look at me and said, "You saw Maple Cross, didn't you?" I froze. "How do you know that name?" Her expression darkened. "There hasn't been a rest stop by that name in 20 years. Burned down after a trucker killed 3 people and..." "Never mind. Coffee?" The diner smelled of burnt coffee and grease, but it felt like a lifeline. Bright lights, people, normalcy. I slid into a booth, still trembling. The waitress poured coffee without asking. Her name tag read June. "You look like you saw a ghost," she said. I tried to laugh it off. Maybe I did. She didn't smile. "Tell me exactly where you were." I hesitated, but the words poured out. Fog, the truck, the figure with the gray face. June listened without interruption, eyes fixed on mine. When I finished, she set the coffee pot down hard enough to rattle the cup. "You need to leave this county tonight. Don't stop. Don't look back." "That bad?" I asked. "Worse," she said. "Whatever you saw, it doesn't stay put." Before I could respond, the diner lights flickered. A single bulb over the counter popped with a sharp crack. Everyone turned to look, but June didn't flinch. "It's already following you," she whispered. I paid and hurried outside, heart racing. My car sat under the neon glow of the diner sign, but something was off. All 4 doors were unlocked. I was certain I'd locked them. Inside, a smell, damp earth and sweetness, hit me like a wall. My stomach churned. I turned the key and the engine roared to life on the first try, too smooth, too eager. I pulled onto the highway. Midnight had deepened to something heavier, as though the air itself thickened. No cars passed in either direction. The moon hung low and blood orange. My phone, dead before, now displayed 3:33 a.m. with full signal. A text notification flashed from an unknown number. "Close it." I nearly dropped the phone. Another message arrived instantly. "Look in the rear view." The pages fluttered wildly, stopping on a blank sheet. Across it, words burned into existence. "Say the name of what you fear most." The gray figure loomed inches away. "Name it," the voices hissed. My mouth was dry. I forced the word out. A childhood nightmare, the thing that haunted my dreams. Oblivion. The church shook. Candles exploded, raining wax. A roar like a hurricane filled the space. The trailer's red light flared brighter, then snapped to black. When the sound died, I was alone. The pews were empty. The gray figure was gone. The Bible in my hands crumbled to ash. I staggered outside. The church stood in ruins, charred beams, shattered windows, like it hadn't been touched in decades. My car waited in the lot, engine idling. I drove until sunrise, every nerve on fire. At a gas station hours later, I checked my phone. The text thread with the unknown number was gone, But one new message remained. Time stamped a minute ago. Door closed. For now. For weeks afterward, I avoided night driving. But sometimes, when the road is empty and the fog rolls in, I catch a flash of red headlights in the rear view. And every time, I hear the whisper, faint but unmistakable. Don't forget, doors can open again.